going on, everyone? Jack here from Half Chrome, and this is the Hisingy Sunray. It's an FPV drone built for people that don't fly FPV drones. If you're new to the channel, we do a lot of reviews here, lots of drones, electronic stuff, but this thing is different than a lot of things we get here because, like I said, Hisingy built this thing for people that don't fly drones, specifically people that don't fly FPV drones. Now, if you don't know what FPV is, it's first-person view. You put on a pair of FPV goggles, and then you can see the drone, and then you fly the drone from the perspective of the drone. It's super cool, totally different. If you've flown a DJI drone, a Mavic, or something like that, totally different experience. This puts you in the cockpit of the drone for a really unique flying experience. Lots of fun, but it's actually really difficult to do. Since you develop this thing with the person that doesn't want to go through all the difficult steps of learning how to build one of these things, put it together, bind it, put it in beta flight. There's a lot of things I'm talking about you don't need to know because Hisingy made this thing differently. If you have a smartphone and you're used to working on an app, then you know how to program this thing already. Like I said, if you fly a drone like this or like this is not for you. So let's talk about what we're looking at here with this Hisingy Sunray. So this is actually Hisingy's second drone. They released the Stargazer, which was a total FPV kit. If you bought that kit, you got their goggles. These are analog goggles. You put these on your face and then you can see the feed from the camera right there. Now these are made by Fat Shark, which is pretty much the best goggle maker in the industry. You also got this remote controller, which only works with Hisingy drones. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. A couple of buttons on the top. This is how you control the drone here. We've got our engine start button here and your on and off button. The Sunray uses the same batteries. These are 1S LiPos that the Stargazer did as well. So if you bought the Stargazer, this is actually an upgrade. The thing is a little bit faster. It's a little bit more nimble and it lasts a little bit longer, meaning you can fly this thing for a couple more minutes. So when Hisingy develops their drones, they have this kind of storyline feel. Everything is very comic booky, and this Sunray is very much that as well. You get little add-ons and stickers and things like that. And to get started, you're going to go ahead and scan the QR code here with your smartphone, and then everything you kind of set up that way. To get this thing connected to your remote controller, make sure your controller is off. You lift this red cage up, you push a button, you turn on the remote while holding a button here, and you're good to go. I was really surprised at how quick and nimble this little drone was, and that's because if you look here, we have some brushless motors. Now, they're brushed and brushless motors. Brushless motors are a little bit more expensive, but they last longer, and they're definitely more efficient. You get a little bit more power, which was really nice that they did that. A brush motor will look something like this. And they just wear out over time. They're just not as nice. They're cheap, but that's not what we're looking for here.
Okay, so here we are on board the Sunray. This is me flying the drone through the FPV feed. Now, I'm not using the goggles that came with it, but the picture is the same. This is what it looks like. It's an analog feed. You see how it just stopped there? There are some crash protection, so the drone will stop if you bump into a wall. You can change the sensitivity of that. But this drone is so much easier to fly than pretty much any other FPV drone. Here I am going to go up into the rafters here in my basement. This is really hard to do, but because it's managing my altitude, that just makes it a whole lot easier for me. I'm going to do it here again, and it's easy up. Now I'm stuck here, and I'm going to have to go pick it up. Let me go grab it here. All right, so I'm going to set this thing up after I get it out of the rafters, and I'm going to fly a little bit more. I really enjoy flying around in my basement with these goggles. I'll sit on the couch and just kind of rip around. It's kind of a little bit of a stress relief to do this. It's fun. You get a really unique perspective. I have a couple little gates up that I'll zip through, some obstacles with the chairs and the ping pong table, but it's a lot of fun. And the more you practice, the better you get. And this thing, with its ability to customize it, you can fly it slow and steady with that altitude hold, which just makes it so much easier to fly this than a whole lot of other FPV drones on the market. That is really what Hisingy is trying to do, is they're really trying to lower the barrier to entry with this Sunray kit, with their Stargazer kit. That's the whole purpose, right? So like when I say this isn't for drone people, it's not for drone people because they're doing their own thing. This is for people that want to get into drones. Maybe you fly a Mavic Mini and you're like, you know what, that FPV looks kind of cool, but I don't want to learn how to do beta flight and build a drone and put everything together. It's a hassle. It really is. It's super difficult. This is easy. You just kind of buy the kit and get going. Some people say it's like cheating. You know what? I don't subscribe to that. Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about this Sunray.
I'm going to walk you through the app here. That's where the magic happens with this drone. Plug your drone in, you hear that little tone, and then you can connect it by tapping on Device, Configure Mini Drone. Now it's going to search for it here. I'm going to click that button. This is the Sunray. I'm going to click Connect, and boom, we're connecting to the drone. Inside the app, up here, I have a couple different things. Channel. What channel are you on? That is the channel that connects to your goggles here. I suggest either flying on channel 1 or channel 8. If you and your friends have drones, you can fly together if you're flying on different channels. Now, the further away you are, the better your picture's gonna be, meaning if you're flying together. So if one of you is on 1, the other wants to be on 8. You don't want to be on 1 and 2 together. But the tuning tab is where it's at. That's where you can really customize this drone. Now, if you're a beginner, keep things on slow. You kind of gain points as you fly. Now, I have a lot of points here, but I can kind of tune the drone to how fast and how slow it will go up and down. It'll go horizontal, it'll accelerate, and yaw. Yaw is that motion where the drone rotates around like that. There are also some fine-tuned controls, right? Reverse speed and traction control. Traction control is actually really cool. Normally when you yaw the drone, it spins like this, but when you turn traction control on, it pitches and it turns. So it kind of helps pull some of those tight corners in. Really unique feature. I really like that. Now, it's not something I'm used to flying with, so I turned it on low, but you know, play with the settings, see what you like. Then you have some general settings where you can kind of change the name of your drone. You can change the color of the LED coming out the back. Let's change it to red. Boom, look at that. We also have a sport mode, a collision protection, stick mode, and firmware update. Firmware update, let's talk about that first. That's where if Hisingy is doing anything to the software of this drone to make it better, that's where you're gonna click that button and it's gonna make your drone just a little bit better. I've seen software updates that actually improve the flight time of drones, how they respond. There's all sorts of cool things. So make sure you check that pretty much every time you fly, or once a week or whatever. Now let's go back to sport mode. Sport mode is interesting. The way this drone flies, it's basically got an altitude hold. So it hovers for you. One of the things that's really difficult about a drone is that, if I was flying something like this, I have to manipulate all of the different levels that your drone flies at. And the most difficult thing to manage is your altitude, right? It's really hard to keep the drone level. Beginners have a hard time. It's going up and it's going down, and that's really tricky. If you've ever driven an RC car, we don't have to worry about that. It's on the ground the whole time. This drone, the Sunray, takes that away by managing your altitude for you. That is really cool. That's similar to the DJI Avata, which I love that drone. It's my favorite FPV drone. For a lot of different reasons. People are going to hate on that comment for sure, but that's okay. This drone is a lot like that in that it just kind of hovers really pretty smoothly. Now, this drone manages that altitude for you. Now, it's not going to respond up and down quite as quickly because of that. It's maybe not quite as maneuverable as a traditional FPV drone, but that's okay because it's going to make it easier to fly. Now, in sport mode, that goes away and you have to manage the altitude yourself. It also doesn't self-level. Most of the time when you fly a drone, when you let go of the sticks, it kind of goes back to that middle level. In sport mode, it does not. It's basically like right? If you fly something like this, the way that you fly and the components that you have, they're not necessarily the same as this. So it's a different beast entirely. Kind of one of the biggest drawbacks to this drone is the Hisingy ecosystem. This remote controller will only work with other Hisingy drones. And that's kind of disappointing if you ask me. I would love for Hisingy to have built-in ELRS or FreeSky or something like that so I could use this with other drones if I decided to change. I know they didn't because at the time when they were developing all this, that the hardware and the software wasn't readily available due to whatever. But so that's kind of disappointing. So if you buy a Hisingy drone, you need the Hisingy ecosystem, and that includes their batteries, right? This battery only will work with either the Stargazer or the Sunray, and probably other Hisingy drones in the future. I do know that they're developing other drones. This remote will definitely work with those. Depends on the drone whether or not these batteries do, but batteries are the least expensive component that you're dealing with. Now these goggles will actually work with any analog drone because they're just pretty much standard analog goggles. Now, I didn't fly a ton with these goggles because I have my own pair that I really like. They're comfortable for me. They're these small, sleek goggles here, and I can record video on these. So the video I recorded came from these goggles. The picture is the same in these, but these goggles don't allow you to record your video unless you add a module to the side here, and that's an additional cost. So if you want to record your flights, you're going to have to add the DVR. It's a Wi-Fi DVR module, and then I believe you can record to your phone. So that's kind of a neat concept. Overall, this thing is a blast to fly. I was really surprised at how quick and nimble this was, especially compared to the Stargazer. Definitely an upgrade in terms of mobility, flight time, endurance. I definitely prefer this to the Stargazer. So if you have a Stargazer already, this is going to just be a little bit quicker and more nimble, and I think a little bit more fun. If you don't have an FPV drone, or maybe you fly camera drones like Mavics and stuff like that, and you're thinking, I would like to get into FPV, but all that stuff is intimidating. Yeah, this might be a drone for you to consider getting you into the hobby. Now, it isn't cheap. I believe the Stargazer package with everything is like $350. This drone is like 100 and I forget 130, 140, 150, something like that. Like most hobbies, it's just going to get more expensive as you continue to buy things. All right, so what am I going to do with this drone, right? I'm a drone guy. I got lots of drones here. I'm probably going to give this to my son or my nephew or somebody else because that's who this thing is for. You got questions for me? Leave them in the description down below. Good luck, everyone, and happy flying.